for about, it's nearly 6 months now.
Oh, now 6 months.
Yes, a long time.
A long time now, yes.
Yeah.
So, so shall I just start, you see, because before starting, I have to introduce myself, you know, this is the usual things, because we record the entire talk.
Yes.
And then we upload into our YouTube channel.
Okay.
So the kids can see that. And recently I announced an essay contest.
Yes.
English language essay contest, and I found complete lack of interest, you know, for and no entrance whatsoever, you see, so far.
Yes.
Which is unbelievably interesting, you know, strange, you know, in my view, because seems to be writing essays is not the forte of many kids here.
Yes.
So especially English one. So anyway, so I have to introduce myself again. My name is Dr. Vasily Pavlov. I'm the principal of the Saha Junior Science Academy, and I'm welcoming you all to the YouTube channel of the Saha Junior Science Academy. And today we have a guest from all the way the North Island in the city of Belfast, which is the capital city of the Northern Ireland, right?
That's right, yes.
Okay, so this is the Mr. Joshua МУР, and Joshua МУР had a stint of being in Yakutia for some years. I believe it was some years.
That's right.
How many years that was?
I was there for nearly 4 years.
Oh, nearly 4 years. That's very interesting. But have you been to any other places before coming to Yakutia?
I have visited some other countries, but only for short periods of time. So I've traveled to the United States and to Southern Africa as well, but only for maybe a few weeks at a time. But I had never lived anywhere overseas before coming to Yakutia. That was my first time to live in another country.
Okay, so what this choice of choosing the Yakutia come about for you? What was the sort of, you know, background of having making this decision to come to live in Yakutia?
Well, when I first came to Yakutia, I was a student studying Russian, and I was wanting to study Russian at a university somewhere in Russia, but I didn't want to go to Moscow or St. Petersburg, because there it is very similar to Europe, European cities. I wanted to come somewhere different, somewhere that I thought was very interesting, and I found out about Yakutia just on the internet, and I thought this place looks fascinating. And how do people live somewhere that is so extreme, so extremely cold in the winter time? And for me, it was very, very interesting. So I contacted the Northeastern Federal University in Yakutsk, and they were very helpful, and I was able to come over and visit, and I decided to study Russian for 1 year in Yakutia, and then after that I was invited to teach English. So when I first came, I was a student studying English, and then for the last few years I've been teaching English in Yakutia, and I really enjoyed my time there. It is a very interesting place, and I met a lot of great people, and I had good experiences, including being at the International Science Games in the Minor Academy of Science as well. So that was a very good experience too.
Excellent. So having lived in Yakutia, can you remember anything interesting, you know, in terms of the stories that happens to you that you can share with other, you know, people? So that you find amusing or interesting?
Well, I think the one thing that I noticed when I first came to Yakutia was how cold it was, because I came the first time in February, and even though it's not very cold, as in maybe January or December, but it was still very cold. From my experience, I had never had anything that cold. So for me, that was the thing I noticed straight away. As soon as I went out of the airport and onto the street, it was how cold it was. So for me, it took some time to get used to the climate, living in a strange climate, and also the language as well. Obviously, you have people who speak the Yakut language as a first language, and people who speak Russian as a first language. So when I first came, I only spoke English, so no real Yakutian, and very, very little Russian. So for me, it took a long time to learn how to communicate with people, and how to get used to the climate. So there were lots of times that for me it was very strange, and it took a long time to get used to. But I found after some time, when I got to know some people at the university and friends there, it became easier to live.
Right. About any, the experiences of being in such a cold climate, which is, nowhere can be experienced, I believe.
Yes.
Maybe in Arctic or Antarctic or whatever the place is. But anyway, so you're from actually Belfast.
That's right. Yes,
Yeah,
I was born here.
Yeah, born in Belfast. Can you tell me about Belfast? What the city Belfast is like?
Yes. Well, Belfast is it's quite a small city in terms of population. So population of the actual city is maybe about 340,000 people. So in some ways, it's a bit like Yakutsk in that it is a small city, but Belfast has a very long history. It was an industrial city, so there were lots of factories and things like that. So people here in the past used to work building ships and airplanes and things like that. So the most famous ship that came from Belfast was the Titanic, and it was really because there are different opinions in Ireland about how Ireland should be governed. So the government, some people think it is better to have a government in London and for Ireland to be part of Britain. Other people say we want Ireland to be its own country, separate from Britain. And about 100 years ago, there was a lot of disagreement and fighting about should Ireland be part of Britain or should it be an independent country? And most of the people at that time in the north of Ireland, they wanted to be part of Britain. So the people in the north, most of them wanted to be part of Britain. And in the south, most of them wanted to be a separate country. So they came up with this border in the islands. So the northern part, it stayed as part of Britain. It remained in Britain. And then the other part became a separate country. So it's only been about 100 years since Ireland split into two parts, Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And even today, there are a lot of disagreements. People think, oh, we should still be one island independent. Other people think we should be one island in Britain. And there's lots of different opinions. But it was really those different opinions that led to Ireland being separated into two parts.
Okay. And tell me about your family. What community do you belong to?
Well, my family, my background is generally from the community that would support being part of Britain. Traditionally, that's kind of my background. So we have in Northern Ireland, like you said, different communities. So some people have maybe their family would want one way of living and others a different way. So my family background would be what they call unionists, wanting to be part of the United Kingdom. So for me, my personal view, I'm not very strongly one way or the other. So my view on things is sort of in the middle a little bit. So for example, if I am born in Northern Ireland, I can be an Irish citizen or a British citizen, the two things. So I have two passports. One says I'm an Irish citizen and the other says I'm a British citizen. So I'm kind of in the middle. I have sort of two identities in that. So there's a lot of people in Northern Ireland are like that. They're sort of a little bit Irish and a bit British, somewhere somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle. So are these passports different looking?
Yes, a little bit different. They are the same color, and from the outside they look the same, but inside they would say one would say Irish citizen and the other British citizen.
Okay. And you have to apply for the Irish citizenship personally, or is come automatically?
The citizenship is automatic, yes. So when you are born, you can be, you are both really. So you can apply for an Irish passport because you are an Irish citizen, and you can also apply for a British passport because you are a British citizen.
Oh, nice.
It's very strange.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is no actual borders.
No, there is an actual border, but you don't even notice when you're traveling from one to another. You don't see any difference. So there are no fences or walls. You can just drive from one to the other. So sometimes when you go from one to the other, the markings on the road that they paint, so the lines that they paint on the road, they change a little bit. So in the south, they're slightly different. So if you're driving from Northern Ireland to south of Ireland, often you only know that you have crossed the border when the lines on the road are different. So you're driving along and you look down and it's, that's different. So now I'm in the Republic of Ireland.
Republic of Ireland. Okay.
Yes.
So how long it will take you to drive from Belfast to Dublin?
Yes, that would take about 1.5 hours to drive.
Oh, that's very close.
Yes, yes. It's a very small island. I suppose the island itself could fit inside one ulus in Yakutia. It's very small. So we have these two countries in a very small island.
Okay, but tell me about the entire island, territory of Ireland. Where is the best place for the tourists to come and see in terms of the natural beauties and things?
I think personally, I would say the north of Ireland and the west of Ireland are the most beautiful. because on those in the north and the west, you're beside the ocean, and there are some beautiful cliffs and mountains, and you get a really good view. You can see very far across the nature. So for me, I would say the north coast of Ireland is very popular with tourists, and it's a very good place to see. And also the west coast of Ireland as well. In terms of cities to visit, obviously Belfast and Dublin are the two biggest cities, and they have a lot of history and a lot of things for people to visit and to see. So I would say if you were traveling to Ireland, it would be good to go to both Belfast and Dublin, and also to try the north coast and the west coast would also be, I would recommend those.
Okay. So tell me, what interesting things one can see in Belfast?
Well, the main tourist attraction in Belfast is about the Titanic ship. So you can go to see where the Titanic was built.
Okay.
And there is a very good museum. It's very modern and has lots of interactive computer things as well. So it's probably the most popular tourist attraction that we have. Another thing that is very popular is to view the film studios. So in Northern Ireland, they make different television programs and films. So the TV series Game of Thrones, which is quite famous around the world, it was filmed in Northern Ireland. So in Belfast, you can go to see different locations where they made the film, and there are big film studios, and you can go and get tours there as well. So those are the two really big things that usually when people come from America or from anywhere else in the world, they usually want to see those two things, the Titanic Center and the history of the shipbuilding, and then also the film studios.
Okay.
Those are two very popular things.
Right. Excellent. Any famous cathedrals in Belfast?
There are some cathedrals, yes. They are not very famous, but there are some. So I suppose, in London, there's St. Paul's Cathedral is very big and famous. In Belfast, we have some cathedrals, and they are very historic old buildings. And yes, as a tourist, you can go and visit them as well. But they are not very big. They're sort of smaller cathedrals.
Okay.
We do have some.
Right. But tell me about the accents in Ireland. Do they have do you have different accents in Ireland?
Yes, definitely. So my accent, I would have a Northern Irish accent, but within Ireland, even though it's very small, there are different accents as well. And then we've a different accent from the English accent. And often the Northern Irish accent has a very different way of pronouncing vowel sounds. So A, E, I, O, U, we would sort of pronounce them differently. So, for example, the word vowel, V-O-W-L, with a Northern Irish accent, people would say vowel. And then an English person would say vowel. We'd say vowel. So the sound in the middle is different if you have an English person or a Northern Irish person.
Okay.
So if I went to London, I am a British person, I'm British citizen, I speak English as my first language. But if I go to London, as soon as I start speaking, they know, oh, he's from Northern Ireland. They can tell straight away that my accent is different. So it's interesting because it's such a small area, the Great Britain and Ireland. it's not very big and people are very close together, but yet have different accents.
Okay.
It's interesting.
But do you tell me, is there any unique accents in Northern Ireland, which is, even for you, is difficult to understand?
Sometimes, yes. For most of the time, I can understand everyone in Northern Ireland, but often for people outside of Northern Ireland, so English people, for example, they will sometimes find our accent difficult to understand if somebody is speaking very quickly, or if they have a lot of maybe sort of local words or words that the English people are not familiar with. Sometimes then people have trouble understanding each other. Yeah.
Okay. Can you give us any examples of the unique Irish words that you use that is not in use in the rest of UK?
Yes. Well, the most famous one that we have in Northern Ireland is the word we. So W-E-E. So W and then two E's afterwards. So that word is not a proper English word. And it means small, usually means small. And people in England do not use this word. So that's one word that if you hear someone saying that, you say they're not speaking English like an English person, but more like an Irish person, and specifically Northern Irish person.
Well, do I use that when I say like the wee hours or something?
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's a good example of that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would come more from a Northern Irish way of speaking rather than from an English one. But yes, that phrase would incorporate that word W-E-E, we, and that's more of a Northern Irish expression.
Okay. So the origin of this word is the uniquely local?
Yes, yes. So it would also be used in Scotland as well. So Scotland and Northern Ireland have a lot of similarities. So some of the words that you find in Northern Ireland are the same as in Scotland. So really that word we, W-E-E, would come from Scottish, Northern Irish origin.
Okay. So do you have any people that have basically come from Scotland, in some years ago?
Yes, yes. Many people in Northern Ireland are from Scotland, like several hundred years ago, but their ancestors are from there. So for me, my family, I'm a sort of half and half. So on one side of my family, they would have come from Scotland many years ago. And then on the other side of my family, they are from Ireland originally. So my family, I'm sort of a little bit of both historically, a little bit of Ireland and a little bit of Scotland.
Okay. But tell me, speaking about accents, in Britain, there's also some class distinctions in accents.
Yes.
Do you have the same thing in Northern Ireland?
Not usually for class distinctions. Perhaps somebody's accent might be a little bit softer if they are from a higher class, but it's still the same accent. It's just maybe sounds a little bit different. But yes, you mentioned about over in England, yes, there is a big difference between classes and accents. In Northern Ireland, not so much. Usually the accent is pretty similar, even between classes.
For example, in Russia, we do not distinguish between the different accents whatsoever that exist in the UK. And we study some English, which is we usually call just a normal standard English. But is it really standard? What sort of language English we study in Russia? Can you tell me about that? Because you have been to Russia and you know what sort of English we speak.
Yes. Well, when I was there, the English that you would study would be British English. So usually based on very much the English, if I can put it like that, English as they would speak it in the south of England, so that's quite specific. So the sort of accents that you would usually hear, maybe if you have CDs or audio recordings for learning English, usually the accent is from the south of England, from that area. But there can be differences between, for example, British English and American English. And I know some American people who find certain words and phrases that we have in British English quite different. So it's hard to say what is standard English. Certainly there is the sort of south of England English, which is often considered standard English, but it's not always standard. If you go to America, it might seem strange, or if you go to another part of the UK. So like you said, it's hard to say what is actually standard English. But I think if you speak English from a sort of with a south of England way of speaking, it's probably the best, I would say, the best type of English to learn. And that's what you would learn in Yakutia. But there are still differences. It's hard to say that it's standard everywhere, but you would be understood if you knew English as that sort of standard English. You would be understood if you go to America or Ireland or anywhere else.
Okay. Tell me about what was the how is actually different that English being taught in Russia from your ways of teaching English, etc. Is there any difference in teaching ways of English in Russia?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are differences. So one of the things that a lot of people say to me in Yakutia, they say, okay, we studied English at school, but we don't have any practice with a native speaker. And I think that's important as well. So I find usually my students in Russia, they have, in Yakutia, they have very good understanding of English. They can read and write very well. But the communicative side of it, speaking and listening, they're usually much weaker on. So I think in England and in the UK in general, we learn English in a slightly different way because we already speak the language. So we don't need to learn how to speak or to listen. But in Russia, that's very important because you don't have a lot of experience with native speakers. So I think students should have more practice speaking and listening so that you can communicate better. But I think it is probably going to change a little bit more with people having access to the internet, and people can watch English films online or English television programs, and even that is very good for practicing listening and understanding how people speak. So for me, the thing that would be maybe most different between how I would teach English and maybe how I would see other people teach English in Russia is that I would try to focus more on speaking and listening than on the other reading and writing, because I know that in the Russian education system, you have a very good way of teaching the reading and writing part, but people don't have as much practice speaking and listening. So I would try to focus more on speaking and listening side of things when I'm teaching.
Okay. Did you go to school in Belfast or in some other place?
I went to school in the Republic of Ireland.
Okay.
So when I was at that age, when I was at school, I was living in a place called Kilkenny, which is in the southern part of Ireland. So it takes about, I said, maybe about an hour and a half to drive from Belfast to Dublin. And then if you drive about another hour and a half further south, then you get to Kilkenny. And I went to school there. Yes, that was my experience, was more in the Republic of Ireland for school.
Okay. Okay. So incidentally, the Mr. Albert
Yes.
Nikanorov, who is actually a journalist by profession, and he's actually quite a good companion of mine in terms of going to a pub in Yakutsk, which is called it has an Irish name or whatever. That is in the old city of Yakutsk. Do you know that place? Maybe.
Yes.
Yes, and then we have this liking of getting the Kilkenny beer there.
Oh, yes.
So that's how we know about the Kilkenny.
Very good. Yeah, good beer.
Do they really do Kilkenny beer in Kilkenny?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That's one of the big things that they produce there. So when I lived there, you can often smell the smell of the beer making process. So you would go out some days and you can smell it outside in the air from the factory. So yes, there's a big factory for producing beer there. Yeah.
Yes, and I have to say that we missed it greatly.
Oh, right.
Pandemics, we haven't been to the pub for some months, or not months, in fact, almost half a year, maybe more even. That's the thing. And how things in Northern Ireland? Are you quite able to go to the pubs?
No, not at this time. So this is a problem that affects us as well, because all of the places that you would go out to, restaurants and pubs and cafes, they are all closed now because of the pandemic. So yes, we still have a lot of places that are closed and restrictions that are still here as well.
Okay. But tell me, this is really wreaking havoc in Northern Ireland. Does it comparable in the Republic of Ireland? Do they have a similar situation or different?
Yes, they have a similar situation. Because they have a different government, they have some rules that are different, so they are not always exactly the same, but the restrictions are very similar, definitely.
All right, yes. And at the moment, we all are undergoing some so-called the second wave of the pandemic, and it is really hard for everyone else, for everyone, in fact. And but talking about that, you see, do you miss anything of the previous post or the pre-pandemic from the pre-pandemic times? What do you miss most?
Well, I miss, actually, the thing that I miss most is being able to travel. So my fiance is from the United States, And I would like to go and visit her in the United States, but at the minute, people coming from Europe are not allowed to travel to the United States as tourists because of the pandemic. So there is a what they would say is like a travel ban. If you're a tourist, you're not allowed to come from Europe to America. So for me, that's maybe the most difficult part, are the travel restrictions, because I would like to be able to travel a little bit more, but I can't at the minute because of those restrictions. So for me, that is probably the hardest part.
So what the authorities tell you now? What do they ask you to expect? Is it going to last for some years or some months or whatever? Because we don't know what the authorities in Northern Ireland or in the UK tells the people. We say,
Yes.
you know, please tell me about it.
Well, it's very hard to know. People think that perhaps in the springtime things will be back to normal or close to normal in the springtime. So I think that's what we sort of have in our heads, is maybe early next year things will return to normal, but nobody knows for certain, and nobody knows how long these restrictions will be in place. So that makes it very difficult, because if you have maybe a business, if you run a restaurant or cafe and you have to close your business and you don't know when it will reopen, so that can be very difficult for people.
Yes, exactly. And the people, some people even calling it a new normalcy. I don't know
Yes.
how normal it is, the new normalcy is.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, but I think it's something that we have to live with. And talking about that, you see, there was a very, as you said, a vibrant beer culture in Ireland, you know, which has a very long-standing history and so on. Do you have any unique Northern Ireland beers and can you name some of these beers? Because I know some of the southern one, which is Kilkenny, that one, and do you have any Northern Ireland ones?
Yes, in Northern Ireland, they're not so famous beer, but for whiskey.
Okay.
So there is a type of whiskey called Bushmills Whiskey, and Bushmills is a town in Northern Ireland. So in terms of drinks that come from here, Bushmills Whiskey is probably the most famous. And it's also one of those things that often tourists go to visit because people have maybe heard of this whiskey and heard the name Bushmills. So they want to go and visit the town of Bushmills where this comes from. Yeah.
So this is not a uniquely Scottish thing, the whiskey.
No, I think it originated in Scotland, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But definitely Ireland has whiskey production as well.
But do you have a beer, the pub culture in Northern Ireland?
Yes, that's something that's throughout Ireland, and sometimes it can be a problem because we have a problem with alcoholism sometimes, and people who drink too much. Sometimes it's not a problem, you know, people drink responsibly and it's more of a social thing, which is okay. But then sometimes it becomes a problem when people become maybe alcoholics or they drink too much. So we have a sort of a culture of it, a history of it, and sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's not. So.
How usual to have a pub outing for any average Northern Ireland person?
Oh, it's hard to know. I personally do not I do not go out very often, but some people would go out, nearly every night, but that would not be normal either. I would say usually maybe once a week for the average Northern Irish person, maybe once a week. So maybe on a Friday or Saturday evening, they would go to the pub. But it's not the same for everybody. So I usually do not go out very often, but other people will go out nearly every night. But on average, I'd say maybe once a week would be normal.
This is the usually considered to be part of a social fabric of the community and the most important institutions as far as the social interactions concern, because people do talk to each other and they have some place to come, and this is that's why it is a very traditional way of spending the leisure time.
Yes.
I suppose in the UK as a whole. And
yes.
But what else you see? What else people can do in Northern Ireland in terms of the social interactions?
Well, yes, often people watch sports and sporting events. So that can happen. For example, if it's on television, that's often a reason why people will go to a pub, is maybe to watch sporting events. But also people might go to, yes, people might go to the actual venues, so to sports arenas and stadiums, to watch sports. So the two very popular types of sport here are football, so soccer, and rugby as well. And we usually, if you have people who go to a sporting event from this part of the world, it would often be rugby or football. I am not a very big sports fan, but I do enjoy watching some sport, and probably my favorite would be rugby. I think it's a little bit more interesting than football.
Right. Yeah. So how well fare the rugby team of Northern Ireland compared to Republic of Ireland?
Well, it's interesting because in rugby, they only have one team for all of Ireland.
Okay, so, that's interesting.
Yes. In football, so soccer, they have a Northern Irish team and a Republic of Ireland team. But in rugby, they just have Ireland as a whole. So north and south.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Excellent. Yes, it is. It's very good.
Yeah. So what is the most important rugby event worldwide?
Well, that's a good question. Probably the Rugby World Cup. So it's, a bit like the Football World Cup, but only for rugby.
And how many countries do take part in that?
In the Rugby World Cup, it can be, I think, any country from anywhere in the world. There's also a sporting event called the Six Nations, and that would be a smaller event, so a smaller rugby event. But the World Cup would have, any country could play in that. So there are some countries that are not very good at rugby, but they would still maybe play at the early stages in a Rugby World Cup.
Yeah.
So even in the United States, where rugby is not very popular, you would still have the United States rugby team that would play, but it's not a very popular game there. So usually the rugby teams that are the best come from either Britain or Ireland, or from countries in the Southern Hemisphere. So Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, very, very good rugby teams.
What's about all these islands like Fiji and so on?
Yes, also very strong teams. So they would be very small islands, but still they have a very strong team. So we would often say that the best rugby teams come from the Southern Hemisphere. So South Pacific islands like Fiji or somewhere like that.
Oh,
New Zealand in particular, the New Zealand rugby team, the All Blacks as they're called, they would be a very hard team to beat. They're
okay.
a very strong team.
Yeah. Did the island hosted the World Cup?
They have in the past, yes. I don't remember what year, but yes, they have, I think.
Right. I know that some countries like Hong Kong, they have their own rugby team.
Mm-hmm.
And also there is some junior league, some sort of university or some youth leagues in the rugby, and also it has certain different names, and they do have their own competitions and so on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes,
And
that's right.
tell me the other things. You see, I know that in Ireland people do like horse racing. Do they like it in Northern Ireland?
Yes, I don't think it's very popular, but people do like it. Horse racing in Britain and Ireland, it's usually more of a upper class
activity
thing.
Yes.
So some people like it, and I would say it is definitely some sport that people take an interest in, but it's not very popular here in Northern Ireland.
Right, yeah. But do you have any other sports like cricket and so
on? Yes, sports like cricket are not very popular here. We do have some other sports that are uniquely Irish sports. So, for example, there's a game called Gaelic Football, which is sort of a uniquely Irish sport, and also hurling, which is a little bit like hockey, but it again is also uniquely Irish. So we would also have them here in Northern Ireland, and it would be something that's only played in Ireland, so north and south, not in England or any other country. So those sports are interesting to watch because they are very unique Irish sports.
Okay. So having been in the Republic of Ireland school, do you say that the education system in Republic of Ireland is different than in Northern Ireland?
Yes, it is a little bit different. So the system is similar, I would say, but there are some differences. So often the big difference is the exams that you do. In the UK and in Northern Ireland, you do what are called GCSE exams, which is a general certificate in secondary education, and also A-level exams. So there's these two levels of exams. In the Republic of Ireland, it's different because you do a junior certificate and a leaving certificate. So they're sort of similar levels to GCSE and A-level, but they're a little bit different. So usually people will do a junior certificate exam, and then a couple of years later they will do a leaving certificate exam. But do GCSE exams, and then a few years later A-level exams. So the exams are slightly different, but a lot of things are similar, I suppose, between them as well.
Right. As far as I remember, the A-level exams are run by some private entity, or similar as the GCSE exams as well, I think. They run by some private entity or private company that is, and they've been almost operating more than 100 years and so on.
Yes.
And depending on the results, which is coming after that, people can enroll into universities, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, but you had a different experience for going into university. You went, as I remember, to the Open University.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Which
so,
which is the most unique institution, and it is the first ever virtual university in the world, which has been established in 1969, and he has a very unique charter, as well as being as the biggest university, I think, in the world, maybe, or maybe certainly in the UK.
Yes, certainly in the UK, that's right.
And it has a very high standards and very well regarded. Could you tell us about the Open University system? What is it like being a student at the Open University?
Yes, so as you say, the Open University, it's different from all the other universities in the UK, but for me personally, I really enjoyed being there. So usually you can study anywhere in the country, so you don't have to be in one city or one location. In Belfast, there is a small Open University facility, and usually when you study, you do a lot of study by yourself, and they will send you books, and there will be online resources. And sometimes you have actual classes where you go to a venue, but a lot of the time you're studying by yourself, and you might only go to an actual location to sit exams or something like that. You can study lots of different subjects. So there's art subjects like history and English and literature, those sort of subjects, and also a whole range of science and engineering subjects as well. And as you said, the material is very, very good. Also, the professors and teachers that they have are of a very high standard. Some of them have done, very important research work that has been involved with the Nobel Prize winning work. So they're a very good standard of teaching and very experienced professors. It works very well because you can also study part-time or full-time. So a lot of people, if they are working and they have a family maybe, and they can't afford to go to university and stop working, they can continue to work and also study at the same time. So they can maybe work during the day and then study in the evening time. And that might mean they do a university degree or master's degree, maybe over 10 years, something like that, a long time, but they're just doing a little bit at a time. So the Open University allows you to do that where other universities maybe wouldn't allow you to do that. And also, I think a lot of Open University students have a very good sense of self-motivation, because you have to study so often. It's just you have to be very well organized, and you have to be disciplined, and more so than students in other universities. So I think there's very positive aspects from that as well. I enjoyed being part of the Open University, and certainly even postgraduate opportunities. So for doing master's or PhD studies are open as well. And there are a lot of research scientists with the Open University, and they would usually be based at the university's main campus in Milton Keynes. And there would be a lot of research work done. For example, making components for spacecraft is something that they do a lot. So they have a lot of research science work that goes on at the main campus in England as well. So I would certainly recommend it as a university. It was very good. I enjoyed my time there.
Yes. Tell me how expensive it is to study at the Open University.
Well, it depends on the person. So it is not very expensive. I suppose university can be expensive for whoever goes to university. It can be expensive. The Open University is not very expensive, but it can be a little bit cheaper even than a standard university. And sometimes if you can get, for example, grants from the government to study, and that can help as well.
Okay. Somehow, actually, I did some little bit. I went to some lectures or something at the Open University in Hong Kong.
Oh, wow.
It was in 2012. I think there was the Hong Kong sort of prospectus that I have of the Open University. So saying that Open University is in many other places than exist in many other countries.
Yes.
So people can enroll into Open University and do enjoy that.
Yes, yes, that's true.
Yeah, sure. And is it possible for you to tell us a little bit, because the most important thing is the question for us is how to write the English essay. Because the essay is a completely different type of thing that we never encounter in Russia. Because writing essays is not the strong point of any Russian students, because we do not write essays per se. We do have something called the sochinение or something, but could you tell us about what the essay has to have? What what is the structure of the essay and how it should be done, etc. Because I understand everyone who ever studied in the UK schools, they do have to write essays, and there are many essays for that.
Yes, that's right. So it's something that you would have in schools in the UK. So if you were studying English, it would be a very important part, but also other subjects, language subjects or history, something like that, you would usually have to write essays. So I suppose really an essay, it is a longer piece of writing, but you're usually wanting to get across a particular viewpoint or answer maybe a question that is being posed. So I think you sent me an example for the essay competition, what you had to write about. So let me just open this again and see what it says. So you have a theme of Yakutia of the future and what it means to me. So with an essay, you are going to write a sort of a longer piece of work, but explaining and expanding on that topic. So usually the essay has different parts to it. One thing that we say is very important, and you learn this at school, is that it is important to plan ahead of time what you're going to write. So if you think that you have certain ideas, maybe about this theme, the future, what it means to me, it's usually best to note down some ideas first of all. So don't just start writing your essay straight away, but think of some ideas and write them down. So you think then, okay, I have all these ideas. How can I connect them into one piece of writing? So planning is a very important part of essay writing. So you want to plan, and then once you have an idea of what you want to say and how you're going to say it, then you can look at the structure of the essay. So I've sort of drawn a little, I don't know, maybe it won't be very clear.
Or if you can put it there, yes, you can see that. So there's the title, introduction, the main body, and conclusion.
Okay. So this sort of structure is the basic kind of layout for an essay. So usually, yes, a title. So that will be just maybe one sentence introducing your essay. Then the introduction. So this is where you would have maybe one paragraph, so it's not very long, but you would introduce the main ideas. So the main things that you want to communicate. And you would just say briefly, so a short little bit, and it tells you maybe some ideas, but not in full. It's a little bit shorter. You will talk about it in full in the main body, but the introduction is just brief, short little bit about your main ideas. Mm-hmm. The main body is the most important part. It's the main way that you're going to communicate your ideas. So in the main body, you'll talk about your ideas. You'll maybe give some evidence or something like that you have to support your ideas. And we often use paragraphs in the main body. So I've tried to indicate that here with these lines. So there's maybe 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. So the main body, it's split up into those different parts. So if you have an idea, for example, one of your ideas, maybe you could write a paragraph about it, and then the next paragraph might be a slightly different idea. So you take your ideas and you talk a little bit about them. You give more details, more evidence about your ideas. So you introduce what are your ideas in the introduction, and then you tell us more about them in the main body. And that's where you give most of your details about your ideas. And it's often broken up into paragraph sections for each idea. The third part at the end is the conclusion. So it is just the ending of the essay. So you can say different things in your conclusion. So you could maybe look back at what you have said and maybe write a short summary. Maybe if you have any other ideas about what you've said, you can write it in the conclusion as well. So maybe thoughts that I've had about my writing or about the topic, I can also add in the conclusion. So usually in school, when you're learning to write an essay, these are sort of the main parts that you learn about. You have the title and then these 3 main parts. So the introduction and the conclusion are maybe just 1 paragraph, but the main body can be several paragraphs long as you explain your ideas and give reasons why you think those sort of things. So I would say that's the main structure of an essay. There are certain things that are important to remember when you're writing. In an English essay or in any other type of writing, it's important to remember some things. So again, I've just put some points here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I put up certain things to remember to be think about when you are writing. So one of them at the top is the spelling. Very important in any sort of writing that you check your spelling. The second thing is punctuation. So those are these marks like full stop, comma, question marks. And those are very important as well. So when you're writing, make sure you use them and use them correctly. Mm-hmm. The third thing would be grammar. So making sure that you're using the right structures. So am I using a present case or a past tense? Am I using continuous or simple forms? Be mindful of that as well. Mm-hmm. Also capital letters. So if you're beginning a sentence, you want to use a large letter. So capital letter at the beginning of sentences, and names of cities and people. And then the last one I have here is articles, so a or the. And that's something that is very difficult, I know, for people in Yakutia. When I was teaching there, a lot of people had difficulties with knowing when to use a and when to use the. These articles can be difficult. So that's something to be careful of as well. Think about how you use your articles. And I suppose those are the main things to look at when you check your writing as well. So we have the main structure of the essay, and certainly for specifically an essay, it is these four parts that are important: the title, introduction, main body, and conclusion. I suppose another thing I could say, in often when I have checked people's work that they have written, sometimes people who speak Russian or Yakutian, they write very long sentences. So the sentence can continue for a very, very long time. In English, we usually use shorter sentences. So we don't often write a long bit and then comma, a bit more comma. Instead, you write a full sentence, full stop, and then another sentence. So try to keep your sentences shorter as well. Don't go for really, really long sentences. And also I see in the description of this essay competition that you will read your essay aloud on a video.
The most important thing. So the essay has to be extremely well written in terms of its completeness.
Yes.
It has to be concise. It has to be to the point.
Yes, exactly.
There shouldn't be any extra words or very flowery words or too much of the poetical stuff or anything. It has to answer the question.
Yes, in this type of essay, yes. If you were writing an essay that was maybe about English literature and you were wanting to talk about poetry or something like that, you may use more flowery language, like you said, more expressive language. But this type of essay, you're right, you don't want to use all of these things. You're not trying to demonstrate that you know.
Thank you very much for such a great insights in writing an essay and other stuff.
Okay, this is Albert speaking. Yeah.
Oh yes, sorry, Albert, I didn't hear you there. Could you say it again?
No, Albert? I was rehearsing. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was rehearsing my British accent.
Oh,
okay. He's trying to follow you. You see.
Yes.
I think it's a Northern Irish accent, that is.
Yes, maybe you have a Northern Irish.
I didn't notice that those. I didn't click on a mute button.
Okay. So talking about all this amusing stuff, etc. I would like to ask Albert, who is a journalist by profession, to ask you a few questions because he was always one to practice his English. Please, Albert.
Thank you very much. Not much like I want to practice. You know, I'm very good at it already. Joshua, thank you very much for such a great insight about your place and around it. You know, how much time do we have? Because I have more than 10 questions.
I don't know how much time. I'm okay maybe for another 15 minutes.
Okay, 15 minutes. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
The question is, you know, we are so interested. It's about how did you learn about Yakutia? Can you please how did it happen? Maybe it was when you opened google.com and the types like the coldest city on the earth. What was the day like you learn about Yakutia?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know when it was that I actually first heard about Yakutia, but I certainly know that when I was looking for somewhere to study in Russia, I think I must have looked up something like studying English at the university in Russia or something like this. And the website at NEFU was one of the things that I found. And that was something that really sort of was impressive to me. They didn't have very much for foreign students. Maybe all their website was in Russian and it wasn't very clear to me. But the university in Yakutsk, they had a whole website in English and lots of information for foreigners. So it was very easy for me to find when I was looking online. So the sort of English online presence was something that really caught my attention initially.
What were the three biggest reasons that convinced you that you can live in Yakutsk more than actually a year?
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to find out when I first came. I sort of had certain things I wanted to learn. One of the things was, could I survive in Yakut winter? And that was something that I tried. My first time coming, it was very cold. But once I realized, actually, no, I could live here. I can survive the winter. It's okay. That was one of the things that I learned, and that made me think, okay, maybe I could stay on here. The other thing was being able to find work as well as a teacher. So I came for 1 year as a student, but I knew I couldn't stay on as a student. I was not able to afford to stay on. But when I got some work, then I had some money and I was able to live there. So knowing that I could survive in the winter and that I could have a job and I could live comfortably in the city, I suppose those were two things that made me think, well, this is something I could do for more than a year. I could stay a few years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. The next question, the answer is really depends. But in your personal opinion, academically speaking, it's easier to go from Belfast to Yakutsk or from Yakutsk to Belfast?
That is a good question. I always find it easier, I think, to go from Belfast to Yakutsk than back. And I think the reason I always find it easier was because of the flights that I got. So flying from Moscow to Yakutia, it was often overnight. So it was nighttime on the plane and then you were there the next day. So you could sleep a little bit on the plane. But when I was coming back again, usually the flight from Yakutsk to Moscow was during the day. So you were sitting there and you were awake and just looking at the back of the seat in front of you for 7 hours or whatever it is. So I always find it easier going there because at least I could sleep for a little bit. But coming back from Yakutia to Belfast, I always thought was a little bit harder. But that's just my experience.
What are your best recollections while being as a teacher at Northeastern Federal University? What did you find very surprising in Yakut people, in terms of doing things very differently, for example, compared to British people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at first, a lot of my students were very nervous. Especially because in class I would only speak English, no Russian, no Yakut, just English. And I think at first they maybe found that quite shocking to have somebody only speaking in English. But certainly as I got to know my students, I realized that they are quite similar to, people in my own country. So I suppose once you get to know people and you make friends with people, then you realize that actually we're quite similar. There's a lot of things that are similar. And certainly my fond memories in NEFU have been classes with my students. I think the hardest thing for me was, getting used to living and working in Russia, but actually in class with my students, those were the most enjoyable parts of the job. Actually just talking to them, getting to know them and finding out about what they liked and didn't like and things like that. That was the most enjoyable part for me.
How's your Yaku language so far after 4 years in Yakutia?
Well, I can sort of understand. I can understand and speak a bit in Russian. That's okay. Unfortunately, Yakut language I have not learned yet, and I think to me it seems very, very difficult because people tell me, okay, Russian, yes, that's difficult, but Yakut, that's really, really difficult. So I haven't learned really any Yakut yet. So it's something that certainly, if I go back to Yakutia, I would love to learn some Yakut. But at the minute, I just sort of try to get by with a little Russian.
Okay, I'm not the biggest fan of rugby. We talk about rugby a bit here,
Mm-hmm.
But I really like to see this. The super fast runs with the ball in rugby, like the best moments. One can say. Have you noticed that England people is really good at creating sports and not so great at winning it? Because the Australia and New Zealand can be like in a competition, and one can say it's a World Cup, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. There's so many sports that have originated in England that are now played much better by other countries. So yes, places like Australia, like you said, New Zealand, are very strong at rugby. Even if you take a sport like cricket as well, it's an English sport, originally English, but places like India, Pakistan, they are now very, very strong cricket teams. Another sport, football as well. I mean, England has a national football team. They are not the best in the world. Lots of other countries have better national teams than them. So I would say there's definitely, yes, an argument there that you can say there are lots of sports that originate in England, but England are not necessarily the best in those sports.
Thank you very much for Josh. Thank you very much for your questions, and please, Dr. Vasily Pavlov.
Okay,
thank you.
So I can tell you one thing, that Yakutian language is quite an easy language.
Oh, okay.
It has a very strict order.
Mm.
It doesn't change much, and it's very easy to use because you can use any word and turn it into a, for example, verb.
Mm.
You can use all the words from Russian or English or whatsoever, add little bit of the ending, and it will be Yakutian language.
Okay.
Still.
Very good.
So that's why it is the language which was extremely popular in Siberia as the lingua franca, as the language of communication. That is why Yakutian language is so well distributed all over eastern Siberia, even in western part of Siberia as well.
Okay.
It's the language of the trading people, because the Yakutian people, they were the traders.
Yeah.
They used to walk a lot, and they used to bring little trinkets and sell it throughout the East Asia. That is.
Oh, very good.
Yes, and the famous thing is the Yakutians also were very good in making some metal stuff. like knives and things, and they've been distributed also in the entire East Asia, and very well sold in Northern America as well. You see, amongst the Indian tribes. So Indian tribes favored very highly, sought after these Yakutian knives, and you can find that in many Indian tribes as well. You see, I don't know how they actually get all these things, but this is the usual stuff. It is, yeah. But anyway, and there's many words have the similar with the Turkish, you know, because it's one of the closest language to Yakutian, I think, is Turkish. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Not Kazakh, not Kyrgyz, but Turkish. Yeah, surprisingly.
Yes.
It has very ancient words which is can be found only in Yakutian language and only in Turkish.
Right. Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
And many things. Yes. So it's easier for Yakutian people, I think, to learn some Turkish too.
Okay.
Although the Turkish language has many Persian words and Arabic words and so on, which is we do not understand.
Yes.
Anyway, so we had a very interesting conversation today. I'm very happy that we managed to get little information about the Northern Ireland, Irish, the Republic of Ireland, and the island itself, and also about the experiences in Yakutia, etc. And thank you very much for enlightening us on the subject of how to write an essay and so on, because we have some our members of the academy that are quite interested in writing essays at the moment. We announced this competition, the essay contest, in hopes of somehow promoting English language as the way of using it as an academic writing instrument, which is very important, because some of the guys wants to study abroad, and we telling them that is most important things is to write.
Yes.
And especially if you want to enter a university abroad,
yes,
you have to write a very good motivational essay or some motivational letter for that matter. And the essay is the most important thing to get across your views, your ideas, and to show how good you are in logically explaining things.
Yes.
Which is the most important things people are looking for.
Yes. Yeah.
Usually the university enrollment commissions, they usually look for this kind of things.
Yes, that's right.
So we have very little time left for the end of the competition, which is the November the 6th.
Okay.
Okay. The November the 4th, tomorrow or today or whatever, is the national holiday in Russia.
Okay.
Okay, and because previously the biggest holiday was the November the 7th, which is the Great October Revolution.
Yes.
And in order to somehow persuade people not to celebrate that, the current government has a new holiday, which is the National Unity Day, which is today on the November the 4th.
Okay.
So what is the nearest holiday do you have coming over? Or not holiday, celebration or whatever?
Celebration. Well, for us, the next sort of holiday celebration day will be Christmas.
Okay.
So we do not have as many holidays. That was something I noticed when I was in Yakutsk. There were so many holidays, and we don't have as many. So the next one will be 25th of December, Christmas time.
Okay.
So the Americans will have their Thanksgiving celebration before that. But for us in the UK and Ireland, the next one would be Christmas. So
yes, this is the very typical, yes, of the UK people and the people in Ireland. They have a very few holidays.
Yes,
compared to the rest of the world. Main important religious holidays and so on, like Christmas and maybe Easter.
Yes, yeah, yes. Those are sort of religious holidays would be the most popular, certainly the biggest holidays. So, for example, New Year on the 31st of December is a holiday. It is a celebration, but it is not the main or the biggest celebration. You know, Christmas on the 25th of December is a much bigger celebration, and then New Year is smaller. When I found in Yakutия that, you know, New Year is the big celebration in winter. So that was something different for me.
Surprisingly, yes, exactly. Yes, true. And also another thing, you see, when during the war, for example, the people get so many medals and stuff, but in the UK army, you see, people only get the so-called dispatches or something, and that's it.
Yes, you would, if you served in a war, you would get a medal, but usually it's a lot less. Yes,
a lot less. Yeah,
I notice. Yes, certainly veterans in Russia, they often have many medals across their
medals, yes, exactly.
For us, it might just be a small number.
Very small, yes, exactly. Yeah. So this is the difference, you see, understated and a little bit of modest. Yeah, which is
yes,
good.
In that regard, yes.
Yeah, in that regards, yeah. So I thank you very much for your contribution to a little bit of our learning, you see, especially as far as the English language is concerned. And thank you very much for that. It was a real pleasure talking to you today, and wishing you all the best, and have a good spirit and good health in the times of trying times of the current days.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you all well in your essay writing as well.
Okay,
Joshua,
thank you very much.
Joshua, thank you very much. I hope to meet you in Belfast soon.
Oh, very good. Yes.
When soon?
Whenever soon is.
Yeah, for Kilkenny.
Okay, whenever this soon is. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. So how to say goodbye, or do you have your own saying of goodbye? Like, you know, Yorkshire people say tara or something like that?
No, we usually just say goodbye or just bye.
You know,
bye, okay, bye. Bye, Joshua.
Thank
you very much.
Yeah,
Thank
Joshua, we have a comment from our viewer. He says, reputable Joshua, you are very lucky with the weekend.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.